Today, we have a huge update from the Empire State. A former top aide to both Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul, Linda's son, has been indicted on new federal charges tied to a pandemic kickback scheme that steered tens of millions of taxpayer dollars to connected vendors and potentially to the Chinese Communist Party. And let's not forget, the same official is already under indictment for acting as an unregistered agent of China. That's right, a former advisor to New York's governors now stands accused of selling access, abusing power, and laundering money, all while Americans were dying during the COVID crisis. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Nellie Miranda.
I spy with my little eye. Well, a former aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul has been arrested and charged with acting as an agent for the Chinese government. Linda's son, who also worked for former Governor Andrew Cuomo, was charged with violating and conspiring to violate the Foreign Agents Registrations Act, visa fraud, alien smuggling, and money laundering conspiracy, according to an unsealed copy of the indictment. According to the 65-page indictment, prosecutors say Sun used her role in government to quietly push China's agenda, like blocking then-Governor Andrew Cuomo, from meeting Taiwanese officials. In exchange, Sun received millions of dollars and as benefits as well, including Nanjing-style salted duck, lavish cars like a 2024 Ferrari.
Now, Chris Hugh, her husband, was also arrested Tuesday on charges of money laundering conspiracy and conspiracy to commit bank fraud, as well as misusing means of identification. Sun and Hu had pleaded not guilty, allegedly. The pair's actions gave China influence in New York's government for a decade. They were released on bond. Now, the discovery process is a part of the Justice Department's effort to root out secret Chinese agents in the United States. Sun, who is originally from China, has worked in state government for years, and she was fired in 2023 for misconduct. So, Robbie, it turns out she had no direct interactions with Governor Cuomo, according to reporting by ABC News. Had to look into that, as you know, his controversy is dug back up as he testifies before this congressional committee. But just a bit of a crazy story to use her position in government in New York to change New York State officers' messaging about China, whatever that means, and arrange meetings for visiting delegations from the PRC government with New York State government officials.
So on Monday, July 1st, Linda's son and her husband, Chris Hu, appeared in federal court in Brooklyn and pleaded not guilty to a fresh set of charges: wire fraud, bribery, conspiracy to defraud the U.S., and for Hu, tax evasion. These aren't old skeletons. These are new crimes alleged to have taken place while Sun was advising the highest level of government on pandemic response. The key allegations are $44 million in state PPE contracts, kickbacks in cash, luxury cars, and real estate, the use of shell companies to hide profits, and connection to the Chinese Communist Party. So let's break this down. According to the indictment, Sun allegedly used her state position to steer massive PPE contracts totaling over $44 million to companies tied to her inner circle. And in return, she and her husband received millions in kickbacks, including a Ferrari and a $4 million mansion in Manhasset. The scheme reportedly involved shell companies, fraudulent invoices, and politically motivated pressure to rush deals. Prosecutors say vendors were selected not for quality or price, but based on who they knew in Albany.
Linda's son, a former DEI officer and deputy chief of staff to Governor Kathy Hochul, faces serious federal charges related to a multi-million-dollar personal protective equipment, PPE, fraud and kickback scheme during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as allegations of acting as an unregistered foreign agent for the Chinese government. The 41-year-old, who was born in China, was issued a second superseding indictment against Sun and her husband, Hu, for their alleged roles in a PPE fraud scheme during the early stages of the pandemic. She's being charged with wire fraud and conspiracy. She allegedly steered state contracts to two companies with personal connections. Hu and Sun are also being charged with bribery for allegedly receiving millions of dollars in kickbacks from the vendors they favored. A spreadsheet on their personal computers showed that one company paid them about $2.3 million in 2020 and 2021. Another spreadsheet in Hu's electronic accounts showed expected profits of more than $8 million from both companies' contracts with the New York State Department of Health, with Hu noting, quote, "me" in the profit column. The kickbacks enabled Sun and Hu to fund a lavish lifestyle, including a $3.6 million mansion in New York, a $1.9 million condo in Hawaii, a 2024 Ferrari, and other luxury vehicles. Sun and Hu were first indicted on September 3, 2024, for allegedly acting as undisclosed agents for the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party. These charges included violating and conspiring to violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act, visa fraud and alien smuggling, money laundering conspiracy, conspiracy to commit bank fraud, and misuse of means of identification related to the fraudulent use of a relative's identity to open bank accounts. They both pleaded not guilty. They are set for arraignment on the new PPE fraud charges on June 30th in Brooklyn. Sun was released on a $1.5 million bond and Hu on a $500,000 bond with travel restrictions and orders to avoid contact with the Chinese consulate. Their assets, including properties, luxury vehicles, and $210,000 in cash, have been seized.
And get this, these new charges are on top of the original indictment from last year, where Sun was accused of working as a covert agent for the Chinese government, shaping policy, muting criticism of China's human rights abuses, and taking orders from overseas handlers. Interesting enough, her lawyer, Jared Schaefer, called this an overly aggressive investigation. What? So I guess they were just supposed to go mild on her.
These charges are disappointing, that they are the product of an overly aggressive investigation.
Excuse me.
And we are looking forward to exercising our right to a speedy trial and addressing these accusations in the forum where it's most appropriate, which is a court of law. Thank you.
Now let's ask the obvious question. How in the world does someone accused of working for a foreign adversary get close enough to advise two governors during a pandemic and walk away with millions? Linda Sun is no low-level staffer. She was a senior policy advisor, a gatekeeper, someone who had access, leverage, and control over public resources. This is exactly what happens when government officials go unchecked and accountability disappears. So while New Yorkers were begging for masks and nurses were reusing gowns, Linda Sun and her husband were living large off the back of a crisis that were killing millions of Americans. Now, where's the investigation into who signed off on those contracts? Who vouched for the shell companies? And why did it take until 2024 for any of this to surface when the deals were made back in 2020? So here's a little timeline into what we know so far. So in 2020, the pandemic hits. $44 million in PPE contracts steered. Then in 2023, Linda Sun was fired. Then in 2024, the CCP agent indictment. And then July 2025, new pandemic fraud charges. And yet, where is Hochul? Where is Cuomo? Why aren't they answering any questions about how someone with deep foreign ties ended up managing pandemic procurement and state messaging? Now, should we be asking how deep CCP influence runs at the state level? Because how many others are in similar positions of power without proper scrutiny? And if she's not held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, we are opening the door to future abuse of power, of taxpayer money, and of national security. So let me ask you this. Do you think Linda Sun acted alone? Who else was cashing in on this? And Should states be required to screen staff for foreign influence, especially during national emergencies? Let me know in the comments, and as always, if honest commentary brings you value, please make sure you like and subscribe, as it really helps support the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.